Hello and welcome to another video on 3D modeling in Creo. In the previous videos we talked about how to create 3D features using extrude. What we do in extrude is that we make a cross-sectional area on a plane. So for example, we make a square cross-section and then that is swept in the perpendicular direction to that cross-section, that plane that we made the cross-section on, and in the perpendicular direction as it's swept, that area is transformed into a solid, or if it's not already a solid and you want to remove material, it's the material is removed, and that in such a way you create positive or negative 3D features from 2D sketches. Another kind of a sweeping operation where you again start with a 2D sketch to create a 3D object is known as revolve, but in this case you don't sweep the cross section in the perpendicular direction, you sweep it along an axis of rotation. So let's say that we have this 2D cross section, a circle in this case, and we have this red axis of revolution. Now the circle would not be extended vertically. If it was extended vertically perpendicularly, we would get a cylinder, but it would be revolved about this axis of revolution, and as a result we will get a toroidal shape. So that's another way of creating 3D objects in Creo, and in today's lecture we will practice that. As will be shared with you, you will have this prompt in which you have to use revolve to make a shaft initially and then a kitchen roll like this. So the requirements for making the shaft are as follows. The shaft is, the base shaft is identical to the shaft that you created using extrude. It has to be 1 meter long and should have an outer diameter of 200 mm. So let's start a new project. I'll call it shaft revolve. You could start the project and then set your units to make sure they are in mm, or you could uncheck this default template button where by default you go into inches, and now it gives you the option of selecting the system of units. We'll change the inch pound to one of these units which are in mm. So we want to make a solid model, so you could use solid part mmks absolute. We start a new project. In this way my datums are hidden, so I'll display those, and similar to extrude you can find the revolve feature over here, and because the first step is the same where you have to give it a cross section, select a plane on which you want to make that cross section and select the operation, which in this case is revolve. We are trying to make a shaft, so the cross section for the shaft would be a rectangle. If you have a rectangle and you revolve it about an axis, you get a shaft. Depending on where the axis of revolution is, your shaft would be hollow or solid. If you choose one of the edges of the rectangle as your axis of revolution, the shaft would be solid. But if you have the axis of revolution at a distance from one of the edges, then the shaft would be hollow. Let's try to make a shaft, and this will make more sense. The first thing that you should do, you don't absolutely have to, is to tell Creo where you want your axis of revolution to be, because we need to give it two things to make a revolved feature. We need to give it a cross-sectional area, a cross-sectional profile, and an axis of revolution. To prescribe an axis of revolution, we will choose this option, the center line option. And please note that right now we are in the sketch tab. So when we selected revolve, the revolve tab opened, and the first thing that we need to do within revolve is to make a sketch. So automatically the sketch tab opened as well. Now let's create a center line and axis of revolution. You make a line by selecting 2 points. So select a point over here and it starts making a line, and you can fix the second point wherever you want, but just so that things are not awkward, it would be easier to if we had it in the vertical direction. So I'll select the second point over here, and in this way I have made a center line. Now I need to make a rectangle. You can make a rectangle using your corner rectangle option, or you can choose a line chain option. The line chain option is a command where you can create straight lines but multiple segments of it. If I select one point over here and one point over here, I create a horizontal line. You might have noticed that Creo helps me create horizontal lines whenever there is a standard orientation, horizontal, vertical, or at a particular angle. It snaps over there and makes it easier for me to make lines in those orientations. But now when I pull out, it it being line chain still gives me the option of making additional segments. And this will continue until I tell line chain to stop. I can tell it to stop either by hitting escape on my keyboard or by pressing the center mouse button. So I'll create a second line, which is a vertical line, a third line, which is going to be this horizontal segment of the rectangle, and then I'll enclose my rectangle. Now I want to stop the line chain operation, so I'll press the center mouse button and it stops. Press the center mouse button again, Creo gives me the dimensions and tells me that this figure is enclosed. The shaft should be 1 meter long, so I'll give it a height of 1000 millimeters, and it has to be 200 millimeters in diameter. So what we want to prescribe right now is the distance from its axis to its periphery to its outer edge. That would be equal to the radius, 200 divided by 2. We have this rectangle, and this rectangle would be revolved about this axis of revolution, this central line. You can imagine that if it's revolved about the central line, you should get a cylindrical shaft. But let's confirm that. I'm happy with this cross section. I click OK, and as expected, this rectangular sketch that I made was revolved about the central line, giving me a cylinder. By default, it's revolved an entire 360 degrees, but you can revolve it, you can sweep it as many degrees as you want. Let's say that you want only 265 degrees, so it will only sweep it for 265 degrees, and you can also change the direction of the sweep from the starting point. You could prescribe values from here, or similar to extrude, you could use this handle to control the extent of the revolve feature. We want to make a complete shaft, so we do need 360 degrees. I'll put that back, and this is the base shaft that we needed. Click OK, the yellow turns to gray, telling us that our feature has been created, it has been confirmed, and now we can rename it to base shaft. And this shaft is identical to the one that you made using extrude. So the point over here is that based on what you are wanting to do, you will have multiple options that you can choose from within Creo, and once you have some more practice, you get a feel for which option is better suited for this operation, better in terms of efficiency, where you have to spend less time creating that feature. For cylindrical features, revolve is a pretty good command, but with practice you get a feel for that. So that was the first requirement, make a 1 meter long cylindrical shaft with an outer diameter of 200 mm, and now it's asking us to make circumferential grooves on its surface as well. For that, we'll again use the revolve command. And the grooves have to be along its center. They have to be 10 millimeters long and 5 millimeters deep. Let's see how we can do that. Now what we'll do is that we'll use revolve, but not to add material, but to remove material. Select one of these two planes, we'll select this plane, and start a new revolve feature. The grooves have to be along the center over here. So once we start making a groove profile, it would be, we will need to make sure that it's 500 mm from this base. So the first requirement is that it has to be 10 millimeters long. So let's make a line on this edge using line chain. I'm going to press the center mouse button to stop making further segments, and I'll adjust the length of this to be 10 millimeters. And this distance is being measured from its bottom end. So for this to be in the center, this distance has to be 500 minus 5. Yes, so the center of the shaft would pass through the center of this line. Okay, so now we have this edge and we want a circular groove which is 5 millimeters deep. So for that we'll use one of the arc commands. I think it would be, so you can make arcs in different ways. There's the center and ends command. We'll explore that later. Let me just show you how that works. For center and end, you select a center of a circle and then you pull out to the appropriate radius. Then you select the ends of your arc. That's one way of making an arc. Uh, we'll delete that for now. I think I might be wrong, but the 3-point arc might be better over here. So for a 3-point arc, as the name suggests, you need to give it 3 points. I'll select 1 point over here, 1 point over here, and the third point over here. And naturally, this distance within the shaft would be 5 mm, but we can confirm this by measuring the radius over here. I'll explain what's happening over here, but we can see that the radius over here is 5 mm. When we manually prescribe a dimension, what happens is that Creo thinks that we want to be able to change that dimension. But over here, there are two pieces of information, two dimensions conveying the same piece of information. Creo gets confused. It's just saying that you have told me that the diameter of this arc should be 10 mm, and now you want to be able to tell me that the radius should be 5 mm, and both can't be in conflict. And if you change 5, the other dimension would change as well. So you're over prescribing the dimensions. You could either delete this constraint that you have by selecting that and deleting that, and then you can make adjustments using the radius, or you could have deleted the radius and then made adjustments using the diameter. So this is a cross section that I've created, which is 10 millimeters long and cuts 5 millimeter into the shaft, which is the requirement of the groove. Hopefully you have an intuition about what has to happen next. This cross section has to be revolved about the central axis. So for that, I'll create a center line along the central axis, and when I click OK, what I expect is that this cross section, which I confirm by pressing the center mouse button that it's enclosed, because if it's not enclosed, similar to extrude, your revolve can't take place. Because it's enclosed, I expect it to revolve about the shaft, and once I select remove material along the surface of the shaft in the circumferential direction and give me a groove. I'll select OK, and Creo correctly thought that I wanted to remove material, so it has enabled remove material from here. Had it not, then the feature would have been created as a solid feature, but that's something being overlapped completely in the solid shaft. You don't see anything. So, but had this not been selected, you can select it from here, and you can see the material has been removed to create a groove that we wanted. And you can call this new feature groove. And another thing that you're asked to do is to create 4 identical grooves on either side, spaced uniformly apart. This is just an excuse for me to introduce you to a second kind of pattern. In the previous video, we talked about creating patterns about an axis, but over here we'll see how we can create patterns. We create copies of the same feature in a particular direction. So select the feature that you want patterned, and select pattern. And now, instead of having the axis type patterning, we will choose direction type patterning. Within direction type patterning, you can give it two directions in which you want that feature to be recreated. I'll select this axis, the central axis, to tell Creo that I want things to be patterned along this axis. I want 4 copies of that feature to be created, and I want them spaced apart 30 millimeters. I spoke incorrectly. I want 3 copies of that feature to be created. The total number of features would be 4. So the original one plus 3. And these yellow markers tell you where they are being created. 30 actually seems a bit too small, so I'll increase it to 100. And when I click OK, 3 additional grooves have been created along the shaft. The requirement is for you to create these grooves on either side of the shaft. So modify your pattern and choose the second direction from here. The second direction would again be along the axis of the shaft. Select that axis. I want 3 additional members spaced 100 meters apart, and along that axis I want it to create those features on the other side. So I'll flip the direction, and now those 3 copies are being created on the other side instead of being created on the same side. Now when I click OK, I see that I have a total of 7 grooves, 3 on either side, identical to the base groove that have been created. This was the prompt in your checklist. I'll use this to explain 2 edge modification commands that we have in Creo. So I'll hide my datums to make things less crowded. Sometimes you want this edge not to be a sharp edge. You can make it a rounded edge using this command, or you could give it a taper, a flat cutout using the chamfer command. Let's start with chamfer. Select the edge that you want to be processed, and then click chamfer. You can adjust the size of the chamfer, and if you play around with these options, you can also adjust the angle of the chamfer. Normally the default D by D where both the dimensions are the same, that's good enough, and we won't spend more time exploring this, but you're welcome to do this on your own leisure. So in this way you could chamfer your edges. Let's try rounding the other edge. Just like chamfer, select the edge that you want to be processed. Instead of chamfer, select round, and you can similarly round the edges that you want and adjust and select the radius from here or using these handles. And you see that additional features are being created within your model tree as we go. Let's say that you wanted to have the edges of these grooves be rounded. At this stage, you would have to either do it for all of the edges, or you would have to do it for one and then create an additional pattern. But had you done it initially for the original groove that we made, which is this groove, so if you look in the model tree, all of the grooves that you have made, and you including the original one, they have been lumped together in this pattern one of groove object. And if you look into it, the first entry, that would be your original groove. So I'll show you how we can round the edges of this groove. Simply select this edge. So I want to round both edges, so I'll hold down Control and select the second edge as well, and I want to give it a radius of 5 mm. I could select all of these edges by holding down Control and do it for all the edges if you want, but the more efficient way would have been to just make the initial groove, make its edges round, and as you were patterning, not only pattern the revolve that you made, but also the rounded edges that you made from the model tree, and then all of the additional grooves that you would have made, they would have had rounded edges. That's everything for the first part of our discussion on revolve, and the second part where we need to make a kitchen roll. I'll go through that rather quickly because it uses the same basic techniques, and it's just additional practice, and it's more practice of sketching than revolve, because revolve is really simple. You make a cross section, you make an axis of rotation, and then you rotate it about that axis. So these are dimensions that I've listed that we want our part to have. So I won't save this, I'll just close this. If you want to close your project that you're working on, don't close it from here, because if you close it from here, the whole program will close. Go to file and close it from here, that only closes the project. I'll start a new project, I'll call it roll. I'll change the units from here, model properties, MPS set. Okay. I'll enable my datums, and let's think about what we need to do. We need to create a kitchen roll like this, and for objects like this, intuitively you can tell that revolve would be a good choice because it has a lot of internal features, and if you just make one cross section that has all of these features and revolve it about its central axis, that's easier than making multiple extrudes. For example, you might make this extrude using a circle, pulling it up, and then rounding the edges, and then making additional extrudes and rounding them. That would be a lot of work. But as we'll see, we can make this fairly simply using revolve. So I'll select this plane and start a new revolve feature. Let's make an axis of rotation. So this is our axis of rotation, and the first thing that I want to make is the top. So I'll make this. Actually, what I'll do is that I'll make a construction line that will tell me where the outer edge of my kitchen roll should be. So if this is my, let me see if I can draw over here. I can draw over here. So if this is my axis of rotation, then the outer edge would be 42 divided by 2, 21 millimeters apart. And because there are multiple features like this part falling on that line, to assist with its construction, I'll make a construction line. So construction line or construction entity within sketching are features that will not show up in your final sketch, but they're only there to help you in making your sketches. If you press this button over here, it will put you into construction mode, and now whatever you sketch, those would be dashed lines that won't be a part of the sketch, but they would be references that you can use to assist you in sketching. So I want to make a construction line, so let's make a vertical line over here. By selecting line chain, pressing the center mouse button, and because I'm in construction mode, this line has been created as a dotted line. I press the center mouse button, see the dimensions, and I'll change this dimension to 42 divided by 2, 21, and this line will be a reference that will help me make other features that I'm going to make. The first thing that I'll make is this top. So the first thing I'll make is this central edge. Let's start from here. I'll just make, I'm still in construction mode, So I'll disable the construction mode and I'll make a vertical line, and the total height of the roll is 270 mm. So I'll set this to 270 mm, and I'll also increase the length of my construction line to be longer. Then what I've made now is this central line of my cross section. Now I'll try making this top semi-spherical feature. For that, I'll start with a line. You can bring it all the way out over here, and this snapping is telling you right away that it's 21 mm, and that's one of the benefits of having made a projection line. If you look at the cross section, you see that it's actually slightly less than 21 mm. So I'll select a point over here. I'll press escape or the center mouse button to stop making further line segments, and I'll create an arc over here using the 3-point arc object again. I'll select this point over here, I'll select some point over here, then you have to select one more point. So as you see fit, you can choose a profile that you like. This profile seems reasonable to me, and the crosshair that you see moving around, that's telling you where the center of that arc is. So I'll go with this. The next thing that you need to make is this curved feature, and this is not a circular arc, so it's not a circular arc exactly. So what you will use is not the arc sketching tool, but the spline sketching tool, which is this over here. And with spline, similar to line command, you select multiple points, and that helps you create curved features. Select a point over here, select a second point somewhere over here, and then when you start selecting the third point, depending on where you select the third point, you will be able to create a curved feature. We know that the end of that point should be 21 millimeters away from the center, so I'll select any point along this construction line, and because I don't want additional features, I'll press escape, and in this way I created this spline, this curved feature. Now I need to make a groove, so I'll use a line chain for that. I'll select escape for now to see what I need to make next. So what I just made was this feature. So I've used line chain to go down, make a vertical line, dig into the cylinder, and in this way I made a groove. Now I need to take it down. Because you are not given very detailed dimensions, you do have the freedom to choose some of the dimensions. So now I'm trying to create this part. So I'll bring this line down over here, press escape, and actually now I'll make this part over here, make the base. And I know that the base has to be 20 millimeters long and 150 mm in diameter. So using line command, I'll make a line and another vertical line and bring it down to the original edge of the roller, which is 21 mm, and stop making line segments. Now I'll fix the dimensions. This is 150 mm, so this should be 150 divided by 2. The height over here should be 20 mm. It's not showing me the dimension, so I'll manually ask it to show me the dimension. I selected dimension, selected the feature that I want the dimensions for, then I'll press the center mouse button. I'll change this to 20, but it's not letting me change it to 20. We haven't spoken about this, but these symbols over here are different constraints. Over here, somehow, while making this line, I gave it a constraint that this line not only needs to be vertical, so this symbol means vertical, and this is where you can prescribe constraints from. It also has to be equal to some other feature that exists. So probably what was happening was then when I was pulling this up, Creo would have showed me that this at this point is equal to some other feature, and I said okay, I want it to be equal. So now Creo is not letting me change that. So over here what I can do is that I can select this constraint and delete it. So now hopefully I'll be able to change this to 20. And constraints are a very useful thing. We'll explore them more later on. So now I've made this base, and we can see that our sketch is not complete. We have two open edges. So I'll create a vertical line up to here, press escape. So I've made this part, and now I'll try to join them together using a spline. You could use a spline or an arc as you want. I'll use an arc, in fact. So 3-point arc, point 1, point 2, no, arc is not going to be suitable over here, so I'll go with a spline, second line, then I'll pull out and try to give it a curvature, escape. Now you notice that there is a problem. When you press the center mouse button, you don't get the central area highlighted pink, which obviously tells you that it's not enclosed, and that's because of these two open edges. So what you need is to get rid of this additional curve sticking out. For that, you can use the delete segment feature. Delete segment, and then just run it through the segment that you want deleted, which gets highlighted. I wanted this additional segment to be deleted, and by using the left mouse button, dragging and pressing and dragging it through the feature, that feature has been deleted. And hopefully now when I press the center mouse button, this will be highlighted, which it is. I think I've made the center line over here. I have. So hopefully when I press OK, this cross section will be revolved about the center, giving me a kitchen roll type shape that I wanted. Generally that complies with all the dimensions that we have over here, but the edge of the roll needs to be rounded. So you could have done that in revolve by giving it an arc over here, or you could do it simply by using round and fixing the radius as you want. I think over there the requirement is 10, and in this way you've created your kitchen roll. You also notice in the prompt that this kitchen roll looks like a wooden kitchen roll. You can change the appearance, the colors of your parts by going to view and going to appearance and selecting a color that you want. So let's say that I wanted to paint some surface, this surface green. So I'll select that color, select this surface, press the center mouse button, and this surface has been painted green. If you go to shading with reflections, that gives you a more realistic picture of how the color would look like. I'll hide the edges, and we don't want it to be green, so what we want to do is to have it a wooden texture. So the first thing that you do is that instead of manually selecting all the surfaces that you want to paint, select your part from here. So this roll.prt, that's what we are working on. If we select this, then automatically all the edges are selected, and if I were to press green, everything would be painted green. But I want a wooden texture, so I'll select roll from here, and you have a rich library of different appearances in Creo. You can explore that at your leisure, but if you want something that you have in mind, you can also use the search bar over here. So I'll search for wood, and it gives me these options of wooden textures slash colors. Select whatever you like, and it has been colored as per that. For some reason it did not color the whole thing. That's a bit bizarre. Okay, so I'm going to manually color this as per that color, and in this way you've created a wooden looking kitchen roll. That's everything that we have for this video. The video ended up being a bit long, but hopefully this gave you a good overview of how to use revolve and how to use different features of sketching. Well, thank you for watching.